So the season entering its final last push with 6 races to go, 3 sprint races as well. It's high time we had a look back at all of those Formula 1 rookies that joined F1 this season and finally once and for all get a definitive ranking of which rookie has been the best all the way to the worst this year so far. And realistically, unless one of them gets a podium or a race win, come on Bortoleto, come on. For me, this is probably how the list will be even at the end of the season. Now, for everyone out there wondering who are the rookies, because funnily enough, there is a slight variation on how many rookies there actually are this season. But for me, to make it simple, I've gone with any driver that hasn't driven more than half a season throughout their career. So that does include Lawson and that does include Colapinto. Because yes, Colapinto technically was a rookie in 24, but he didn't race more than half a season. It gets complicated, but the gist of it is I'm counting them as rookies for now. Although you'll see very soon, it doesn't really matter too much. But the way I'll be ranking them will primarily be on their performances throughout the season so far relative to what car they've been into, and also slightly the lack of hype or the amount of hype that they had coming into the season. As this does weigh on people's minds when they look at some of these rookies, especially sadly for him, the likes of people like Antonelli, but we'll get into it. So let's go through my rankings from 7th to 1st and see how everyone lands on Zach GP's Ultimate Rookie Rankings. So starting off with 7th, and everyone, it's a shock result. It is very, very, very surprising, but it has to be Jack Doohan. So with Jack Doohan, I think we all knew it was going to happen, so I'll keep it short and simple like his F1 career. Before he got dropped, he had a terrible head-to-head with Gasly, where Gasly got 7 points to his 0. Race results-wise, it's actually 2-0 in favour of Gasly. Now, the reason you might think, oh, how is it 2-0? When they raced more than that as partners, but basically both of them are DNF'd at other races, but at races where they both finished, Gasly won. And in qualifying, Gasly finished 5-1 over Doohan as well. Now, not only were the results pretty shocking, but also he just couldn't keep the car on track. He managed to crash in Australia, collided with Bortoleto in China, and of course in FP2, he also had a crash in Japan. And realistically, when your standout drive is 13th in China, when we literally had Leclerc, Gasly, his teammate, and Hamilton all disqualifying, it really just goes to show what it really was like for Doohan in that Alpine. It wasn't good. There's no way he was getting any higher than the lowest on this ranking. Now, heading into 6th place, and we are rounding off the Alpine duo. Yeah, sadly, I have to put Franco Colapinto 6th. Now, that's also part of the reason why I said it doesn't really matter too much, because Franco Colapinto is that big driver where it's like, is he a rookie, is he not? So it doesn't really matter too much because he's right at the bottom of the list anyway. But it just has not worked really that good for Franco this season so far. Now, again, looking at the head-to-head with Gasly, he's got 0 points to Gasly's 13. Race-wise, he's losing 6-4. And on qualifying, he is losing 7-5. So by all means, it is better than we've seen with Jack Doohan. But at the same time, it is still pretty mediocre and just nothing to write home about. I will say, the only thing Franco Colapinto has got going for him is he isn't crashing as much as Doohan, which is quite surprising because we've always seen Colapinto as a driver who crashes a lot, and he has crashed, but they tend to be not when it matters too much, or he's had a spin and he's kept the car going. Like, he's had a crash in Baku qualifying, he's had a crash in Imola, but none of those crashes actually meant too much, and he's actually finished most of the races he's been in. But again, when your standout drive is 11th in Zandvoort, when that's a race where both the Ferraris DNF'd, also Lando Norris DNF'd, so 3 drivers in front of you, which realistically would have been 14th, it's just not anything to write home about. He has been getting better at qualifying, and he has been improving throughout the season, so I do think he deserves to stay in that seat over Jack Doohan. However, it's not much of an upgrade, but to be fair, at Alpine, the car's dreadful anyway, so just get to 2026 and see what he can do in an actual worthwhile car to drive. Then coming in for the 5th spot, creeping into the top 5, I say creeping, he's not actually creeping in, he does get in quite easily over the Alpine duo. It has to be Liam Lawson. Again, reason I mentioned why it doesn't matter too much about the rookies, because he was the final rookie where it's like, is he not? It's up to it's basically whatever you want to say if it is or isn't. But for me, this is serious territory now. I still think Liam Lawson has actually had a half decent season, and he has had good pushes of momentum throughout the season. It's been too patchy for me. Again, just looking at his head-to-head, Hadjar has swept the floor with him. It's 9-4 in favour of Hadjar on races. It's 12-4 in quali. And also Lawson has 9 points less, which is a big reason why he's lower on this list. And then you also have all of the Red Bull drama. Of course, we know he started off the season in Red Bull, crashed in Australia, had a terrible time in China, just didn't work out, got demoted. And then, like I mentioned, it's just been patchy race results throughout the entire rest of the season. He had a terrible start to the season, even after going back to racing bulls. It just didn't click with him a lot until he got a little bit more comfortable with the car, but he's still behind Hadjar. He finished quite a bit behind Hadjar, even in Singapore, when Hadjar had engine issues the entire race. But then, like I mentioned, Singapore, he's 15th, but then in Baku, he's 5th. And I feel like it's just too inconsistent. It's not a terrible season. He's still getting those drives that are half decent, but it's not a season to write home about, which is why it's no better than any of the other rookies. Then coming in at 4th, we have Mercedes star boy of Kimi Antonelli. It's a tough one to put here because Kimi Antonelli, I do think, is having a bit of a resurgence right now, so it could move up a little bit in this later part of the season. And it does hurt me to put him here because he's one of the first drivers, I think, where it comes a little bit into play his hype around him, where Mercedes just pushed him way too much into the forefront of the F1 world. Now, we do have to look at his season relative to the Mercedes driver of George Russell. That helps the most, and what car he's in, because 88 points is miles better than any other rookie has right now, but it's in a Mercedes where his teammate George Russell has 237 points, which puts it right back down to earth for Kimi Antonelli. It's one of the biggest gaps between teammates in F1. The only other bigger one is Red Bull, Verstappen, and Tsunoda. Russell's beating him 14-0 on race results and 16-2 in quali. Again, George Russell is a good driver, but you need to be doing slightly better than that. Like I mentioned, he has had his points in the season where he's had standout drives, like his first race in Australia and in Canada as well, getting his first podium in F1, were really good races. But he's also had races like Singapore where he's finished 5th when George Russell basically went on to dominate the race, getting a first place. He's also had races like Baku where he's finished 4th, losing out on a podium to Carlos Sainz in a Williams. And of course, the entire middle part of the season was just woeful from him after DNF after DNF. He went 6 races scoring only 3 points. And if you push that even further from Imola to Italy, 10 race period, he only scored 18 in a Mercedes. That is just not good. So that is the reason he goes 4th. There's just not enough to push him any higher into the top 3 from now. And like I mentioned, considering the hype around him Mercedes gave of like the new second coming of Verstappen, you just don't see these sorts of mistakes on a rookie, even in a rookie season, from the likes of Verstappen, from the likes of a Hamilton, which he was pushed out to be the next generation of. And I do think Kimi Antonelli is a good driver, but I think he's not as good as they are saying. Like, he's not generational, he's just a great driver, which is good enough for most F1 drivers when you're not pushing that agenda. So that's why he goes 4th for me. Now, heading into the top 3, we're heading into the hard hitters here of the rookies this season. And in 3rd place, it is a very close 3rd place, but he just loses out. It has to be Ollie Bearman. Ollie Bearman was another driver before this season who was a very hyped driver. He had a good stint in Ferrari in Jeddah when he replaced Carlos Sainz when he was getting his appendix removed. And also he had a good stint in Baku in the Haas. So a lot of things were expected of him coming into the season, and he's delivered. Now, points-wise to his teammate Esteban Ocon, he is losing 18-28 in Esteban Ocon's favour. However, when you look at the other head-to-heads, you realise it's a lot of Ocon just having one-off standout drives, and it's not Bearman losing out on consistency throughout the season. Because on race results, it's 8-7 to Bearman, and it's also 10-8 in qualifying to Bearman, which means he's beating his experienced teammate. Now, for me, Esteban Ocon, I do think he's a good driver. I don't think he's a top driver, but again, it's just so crucial and so insane that a rookie is beating your supposedly experienced driver who's supposed to lead the team. And Ollie Bearman's just sitting there, maybe not on the points, but everything else looking golden. He's only not finished in a race in Miami, and Hungary, and the amount of 11th places he's had. He had 4 11ths in a row, from Canada all the way to Belgium. Just, it's insane how consistent he's been and then pushing for these points every single race weekend. His worst result was in Imola in 17th, and there was a lot of qualifying issues that Haas actually had that Grand Prix weekend, which was a lot of a drama at the time. So half of that could have been different. So that result could have been different. And his other bad result was in Australia, 14th, when Haas looked miles off the rest of the grid. It's just a really good showing from Ollie Bearman, considering Haas so far throughout the season, entirely, consistently, they probably are the 8th fastest car. Definitely slower than the likes of the Williams and Racing Bulls averagely. So just to still be in the fight in the midfield constantly, having great top 10 results as well to his name, all he's missing now is a standout drive where he gets himself into the top 5. But hey, we've still got a little bit left of this season to go, so maybe he can. But Ollie Bearman, great season so far. Hopefully he can end it on a high, but for now he is in 3rd place. And then heading into the top 2, and I think you know exactly who's going to be 2nd here, and it is Gabriel Bortoleto. Another driver who has just had such an incredible season that before the start of the season, Bortoleto just wasn't spoken about enough. I talk about the hype thing a little bit, of course, throughout this entire video. And I think another driver who wasn't hyped enough, even Alonso's been saying it, was Gabby Bortoleto. He won F2, and people were still looking more at Antonelli, Bearman, etc. So I'm very surprised that people didn't see this coming, but he has had a brilliant rookie season in that Sauber. Head-to-head wise, again, sort of like Ollie Bearman, it's a very similar situation, which is why I think they're so close in the standings of the rookies, where Hulkenberg beats Bortoleto 37-18 on points. But that's it. Then on race results, it's 7-6 in Bortoleto's favour. And then it's 11-7 in qualifying. And considering Hulkenberg, the big thing about Hulkenberg is he's brilliant in quali. To be beating someone like that is insane. And everyone knows here on this channel how much I rate Nico Hulkenberg. So if you're putting up a fight to Nico Hulkenberg, your experienced teammate, just fantastic position to be in. Now, he has had DNFs like the other rookies in Australia, Miami, Silverstone, but again, it's a lot to do with wet weather races. This can happen in a rookie season when there's mistakes to be made. That's completely fine to have had. But I just think we need to go back to how Bortoleto is in a Sauber. Now, they have had a bit of a resurgence this season, but again, if we take the entire season's length, they probably are the 9th fastest car, very similar to what the Haas is, 8th to 9th. And ever since Sauber sort of unlocked that little bit more, Monaco onwards, he's just been brilliant. He had a P9 in Belgium, a P6 in Hungary, ahead of Stroll, bear in mind that might not sound crazy, but in Hungary, the Aston Martins were rapid, and 8th in Italy. It's just brilliant standout drive showing glimpses of brilliant potential from him in a car that's not normally as up there as the likes of Aston, Williams, Racing Bulls. So for him to be even getting this amount of points, sensational driving from him, and he's not talked about enough. And I really have to just reiterate what I was talking about in the head-to-heads. To be beating Hulkenberg on these stats is incredible. Hulkenberg is a brilliant driver, and Bortoleto, his young rookie driver against Hulkenberg, who's been in F1 for donkeys, has really been putting up a fight. This is exactly what I wanted to see from Bortoleto. Well done to him. He very much deserves 2nd place in this ranking. And then finally, heading into 1st place, it really could be only one man, couldn't it? I don't think there was any shred of doubt making this list that it wasn't going to be him. Considering at the start of the season, everyone completely pushed him away, thinking he wasn't going to be anything. He was just going to be another driver in Racing Bulls who potentially is half decent. And I mean, to be fair, Australia didn't help his case, but Isack Hadjar has been the definitive best rookie this season. Like I've said on Liam Lawson's head-to-head, Hadjar is beating him on every single stat that matters, race, quali, and points. He's only had crashes in wet races. Again, a rookie, this tends to happen a bit, Australia and Silverstone. And he's just completely swept the floor with the competition. Since Hungary, he hasn't been lower than P11 on the grid. In Zandvoort, he got his first F1 podium, and he's also had back-to-back-to-back points from Imola to Spain. And not only were they back-to-back-to-back points, they weren't just P10s all the way. This was a P9, a 6, and a 7. It's just a huge season for him. Now, a little bit worryingly, when he was putting in his great results, it was like, oh, is he going to go to Red Bull? Please do not put him in that Red Bull in his first season. You're going to kill him. However, luckily, he's been able to get this full season in Racing Bulls, and then he'll go over to Red Bull in 2026, which is perfect, because maybe these regulation changes will make the car a little bit more drivable, and Hadjar will be the first driver to perform in a Red Bull. I really hope that happens, because his pace is incredible. Literally, like I mentioned, there was zero doubt when I was making this list that he wasn't the top driver. But I do have to say, overall, none of this does actually really matter, because at the end of the day, the true best rookie on the grid is obviously Fernando Alonso. At the young age of 44, practically a baby, he's beating his more experienced teammate of Lance Stroll, whilst also being one of the most, if not the most, unlucky driver this season so far. I know who my GOAT is, and Fernando Alonso, he's got a good 20 years left in him, I'd say. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching this ranking list. Comment down below, as usual, what are your rankings for the rookies? Are you even counting the likes of Colapinto, even Bearman, potentially, Lawson as rookies? If not, what's your list without them? But at the end of the day, thank you all so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and make sure to enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care, everyone.